All right. Hello, everybody. Hope you all are doing well. This is DFS Army's NBA pre-lock show. Not going to lie, guys, it's a little weird. I haven't done a solo DFS Army show in a minute, but it's also been a minute since we've done this show. But this is the pre-lock show, like I said. Here, I'll go through each game. I'll talk through some of the changes that I'm making in the domination station, which you can see here. And we'll just talk through some guys I like, some guys I'm not as high on. I'll answer your questions as they come up, and, we'll just go from there. Another day in the life. Drew Shady, good to see you. What's up, man? Hope life's treating you all right. Happy holidays, too. It's that time of year. Dixon said, who's hot tonight? There's so many games. I know, there's so many. And there's a good amount of, news, too. And so, we'll see. We'll see. Tattoo, what's up? Just pretend you're having sex. You're used to doing. Damn. Tattoo, you're lucky you're not on here. You're lucky. Had some smart ass comments for you back, but I'm just gonna save those for Sunday. Dixon, yeah, no Giannis, no Lillard. That really made the entire slate a little bit more straightforward. Is probably where I'm looking. Cedric, what's up, man? Hope you're doing all right. JM, agreed. Let's get a takedown tonight. Yeah, it's been a little bit since I've had one for NBA. So let's talk. But for those of you who are new, I've had plenty before in the past. NBA DFS is my bread and butter. So, yeah, that's where we're at. Okay, so first off, we have too many games to waste time. We have the Rockets going up against the Hornets. The Rockets have been a solid team this year, but they're boring from a DFS perspective, 9 times out of 10. But let's look and see any injury news here for the Rockets. I don't believe so, but I just want to double check. Yeah, nothing really moves the needle. Going up against the Hornets, not the super soft matchup that it used to be. Still not bad by any means, but just not a game you get excited to target guys against. No one's standing out for me when it comes to Houston today. You can make a case for Alperen Şengün, but I'm not getting there. There's centers both more expensive and cheaper that I like a lot more. Fred VanVleet, again, just a tough matchup for all these guys. Şengün is showing up in about 10% of my lines naturally. So that's pretty much how I operate. For those of you who are newer, if I don't really feel extremely passionate about a specific player, then I don't really do anything to them in the DS, but I'm also not taking them out of my player pool either. And so when that happens, even though I don't love Şengün today, he's still going to show up in 10% of my lines because the DS likes him a good amount. And a lot of people say it around here, you trust Jesus. So I'm not going to try and fight it. He'll show up in about 10% of my lines. And I like playing bigs against the Hornets typically, so I'm not mad about it. Next up, we have the Hornets going up against the Rockets. Similar situation here. Rockets play at a pretty slow pace. The person who has the best matchup is whoever Fred VanVleet is going up against. That's LaMelo Ball today. So he's a bit of a softer matchup than usual. LaMelo, his price has gone all over the place this season. We know he has plenty of upside. He's the guy for this team. Brandon Miller's not playing. Let's see who else is out. The other guys have been out for a while, but it's really Brandon Miller. This is an increase in usage for Ball. And like I said, I like the matchup in general for him. So I put a 12% min on LaMelo to get him to show up a bit more because he wasn't showing up in some of my early runs. And that's pretty much it. No one else from the Hornets is interesting to me at all because, like I said, this is a pretty, tough team to attack outside of whoever FVV is going up against. Let's see. James needs a winner. Yeah, Dixon. That Hawks game's a little interesting too. We'll get there. I understand, Tattoo. I hope you feel better, man. I hope you feel better. Drew said, I like any team versus the Wizards. Stack them up. Hey, we're not even there yet, but if you look at the leverage sheet, you might see I'm really over on at least one of the guys, but honestly, quite a few. Jose said, I'm playing in the DK 3-game turbo. What's a good core to build around? Jose, we'll talk cores, and I can answer that question for you more specifically as we get closer to the end. We won't always talk core plays on this show, but since it's a Monday and a lot of guys are looking at football, then I'm willing to, share a little bit more than I usually am. Yep. Appreciate that, Dixon. The Kalabali news is annoying, but we'll get there. From this game when we move on. Agreed. Everyone else turds. Dixon, we are on the same thought process, which I think is probably a good thing, but I know sometimes that can go badly for us. But today it will be good. So let's look. Next up, we have the Jazz going up against Cleveland. The spread is the scariest thing about this game. The thing that I like about it is that this is the highest total game on the slate. To be honest, I never like playing guys against the Cavs. That's just not something that's just usually not a winning DFS strategy. But Keontae George is doubtful. John Collins, is that the news that? Yeah, John Collins is doubtful. George is also officially out. We got that 15 minutes ago. And so with them officially being ruled out, that's a boost to some of these Jazz players. And so therefore or at least I'm interested in taking some shots here, even in a tough matchup against the Cavs. Let me see. I'm just double checking because I already know some guys that are showing up naturally in the DS. Just want to make sure I'm not missing anyone else. So Lauri Markkanen was the guy that the sim model liked a little bit. At 6,700, his price is continuing to fall, rightfully so, but we still know there's upside there, even in difficult matchups. He's one of those weird players that's just volatile. Walker Kessler has been in great form, 6,100. They're going to need him today, even if it is a tough matchup going up against Jared Allen and Evan Mobley. I still think this could be a solid spot for 6,100 Kessler as well. And then Colin Sexton is really the guy who sees the biggest boost with Keontae George out. And so those are really the only three players who I am considering on this slate, but I didn't do anything to them in the domination station to make these guys show up. They're just showing up by themselves. And so we see Lauri Markkanen at around 33%, 10% over the field on him, which I like having a little bit of leverage, but that 33% also won't kill me if he fails like he typically has been doing this season. Walker Kessler, I'm at 23%. That's, again, me being about 10% over the field. I like that. That gives me a little bit of leverage here. And so when it comes to the highest total game on the slate, that's something I want. I want exposure to this game. Sexton's not showing up too much. We have Clarkson showing up around 3%. Spies showing up around 1%. Not too much of these guys. Let me look a little bit closer at Sexton to make sure I'm not missing anything. One thing I'm not going to let y'all do today is rush me. Sometimes I feel rushed on the show where sometimes I want to take a little bit more time to dig deeper into some of these plays that I might have skipped or missed over. But I am not doing that today. The matchup for Sexton is what's brutal here. We know he has 40, 50 point upside. And so he's not a bad play at 6% ownership. I think the problem is we just have the Ryan Rollins chalk where we already have a lot of value. And then we also have Gary Trent Jr., who we haven't talked about yet, but is also in a really great spot against Chicago. And so both of those guys are super cheap. Let me double check their price. Yeah, Gary Trent 4,100 and Brian Rollins. Yeah, okay, that makes more sense. So even though Sexton's in a good spot, he's still $1,000 to $2,000 more than the Bucks value at the guard position. And so even though I like Sexton, I think you can put like a 5 to 10% min and be fine. I have mins on so many other players that we'll get to. I couldn't make a case for him. But at least Kessler, like you said, Dixon, lock for a double-double tonight without Collins. I feel much better about that. And then Clarkson's going through some stuff, man. We gotta give him a break. It's that time of year. He's had a lot of stuff going on in his personal life this year that's gotten out. But I'm sure he has even more going on behind the scenes. Ooh, I need money. Why do you do this to me? You know, I love a good narrative. Damn it. I was just about to say I'm okay not playing Sexton. We talked about it. This is a game I'm looking to target. Highest total game on the slate, though. So I'm just going to put a 6% min on Sexton. And hopefully that doesn't destroy the DS. Because like I said, I already have a lot of mins on this slate. Let's see. Hopefully it'll be fun. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the Jazz. We'll see how much Sexton's showing up after this run. But the Cavs side of it. This is the side of it that I'm always looking to target. There is a huge blowout risk. That is a trend on this slate, but I'm not scared of blowouts. They're low owned because everyone's afraid of the blowout. So I'm not going to be a part of I'm not going to call them sheep, but you know what I mean. Donovan Mitchell, fantastic matchup against the Jazz. I can say that for all of these guys, but he's the guy I want to get leverage on. We have the revenge narrative, which isn't really a thing for those of you who are really anal about that, but I do still love a good narrative. I love the matchup. I love the total. 7% ownership's too low. Price tag is appropriate, but I love his upside here. Evan Mobley, Jared Allen, I'm just matching the field on 10%, 2%. Soft matchup, good total. But the Jazz are a little bit better on the front court than they are the back court. But with that being said, Collins out, George out, that does make things even easier. But still, I wanted to prioritize Mitchell, and then I'm significantly over the field on Garland as well. Could have wrote him up as a leverage play, but didn't want to write all the Cavs up. So again, really focusing on the core four guys, but it's Mitchell and Garland that I'm prioritizing in a really good spot. Okay, let's see. Where's Sexton? Okay, he's right at 6%, so it didn't change too much. The DS is not a fan, but I still want to take a shot there. All right, OG said, Merry Christmas, Jay. Who's your must-play any site? I'm feeling all right, man. I can't complain. Finally better. I feel like my voice is finally not super, super scratchy. Must-plays on the slate. Bobby Portis is a lock and load for me. His usage is just too high when Lillard and Giannis are out. Outside of that, I don't really think anyone's a must play. I have a ton of Ryan Rollins. Brook Lopez is showing up a good bit for me. SGA, Jaden McDaniels, but we'll get there. JM said, is Middleton a full go or is he still going to be on a minutes limit? He did not play more than 20 in the Vegas tourney. Yeah, so we don't have official news, JM, on that, but I would assume he's still going to be on a minutes limit of sorts, but we don't have an official answer on that. Suggs out. Oh, okay. Suggs available. Let me see. What's the official? I see Jalen Suggs as a game time decision. And now I see he's available to play. I had to refresh. Yep. Good call, Dixon. Good call. Nate Dogg said, any value of Eason out? Whitmore, also about ball, probably going to put up 30 shots. Yeah, you're not wrong. No, with Eason out, I think just in the context of this large slate, there's other injury news that matters more. But let me see. If you just want like someone who does see a boost with Eason, let me see if anyone stands out for me. I mean, I wouldn't play these guys, but with Eason, he's a forward for the Rockets. That's going to be a boost to their forwards. Guys like Thompson, Brooks. Those are really the guys I would prioritize the most. Maybe Smith, but I'm not playing them. Okay. Tattoo. All right. Karis LeVert can explode if he gets minutes. You're not wrong. He's just someone I don't really look to target too often. It does feel scary, but in this case, I'm not going to overthink it. Yeah, that's usually the thing for me, William. It's just not trying to guess on LeVert. Yep. All right, y'all. So next up, we have the Celtics going up against the Magic. For the Celtics going up against the Magic, like I just said, this is a tough game. Two pretty solid defenses. The Magic do have quite a few guys that are missing, but the Magic have they've kept rolling with every single injury, just playing at this slow pace, playing their offensive style, and still finding a way to stay in these games, which really doesn't make things better for me on either side. This is one of the lowest total games on the slate, and so I'm not trying to find a reason to play guys from this game because of that. The ownership is super low here. If you have a lean on maybe this being a blow-up game for Tatum or Brown, sure, but no one stood out for me, and so there's other guys who are in much better spots and priced more appropriately, and so I'm focusing on that. The Magic side is slightly more interesting just because they're missing so many guys. Let me look a little bit closer at it and we can walk through it. Orlando. So Jalen Suggs playing is big. If he was out, this slate would have gotten nuts. We don't have to talk through that scenario, but for now, it really calms things down. Wagner getting out with that knee injury isn't that dramatic. Franz has been out for a while, but with Mo Wags out, we have Carter, really all the bigs seeing a bit of a boost. So guys like Wendell Carter Jr., guys like Isaac are the two guys that I'm looking at the most. But again, just due to the matchup and because of some of the other more solidified value on this slate, I'm more interested in them. None of the Magic or Celtics are showing up in any of my lines so far on this slate. I don't think, just if you were taking or considering taking a shot on a guy like Wendell Carter Jr., he's probably the only guy I would really look at in that spot. All right. Any more? I'm trying to find a game where I'm actually excited to play guys from it again, but it is pretty narrow for me on this slate, besides a few spots I just want to get different at. But next up, we have the Spurs going up against the Philadelphia 76ers. For the Spurs tonight, they're just pretty healthy. And these healthy teams are not teams that we can get excited to play on a slate where there's just more obvious value. Let me look a little bit closer and see. Do we have any interesting news? Yeah, I'm not seeing anything that really moves the needle for me with the Spurs. I thought about Victor Wembanyama, but the center play on the other side of this game is just so much more enticing, and I don't have to pay at $11K for him that it's tough for me to find a reason to play Victor. Sohan, Vassell, Champagny, all these guys, Castle, when they're healthy, it's hard for me to find a great case for them. So double check. None of the Spurs are showing up in my lines at this point, and totally fine with that. For the Sixers, I really like Joel Embiid here. I know his minutes have been a little all over the place. He's been injured in and out of games, which is never fun. You never love playing Joel Embiid in those kind of spots. But not going to lie, I'm biased. I've had some of my biggest, like, 6-5-figure wins just taking shots on guys like Joel Embiid when a lot of people aren't playing him. He is 17% owned, but I do think that's still lower than it should be when he's 9,600. Last season, when he was out for an extended amount of time, he was still 11K, 11,500, pushing 12K. Granted, he did have, more consistent 60, 70, 80-point games back then, but we're starting to see him play like 30-plus minutes again, where we finally saw 60 points against Charlotte. We saw 50 points last time out. And then last time we saw Joel Embiid face this Spurs team, it was last season. Granted, they're a slightly different team now. But this is when we saw him going up against Victor have a 100-plus point fantasy performance. Playing 36 minutes, nothing crazy. But there's obviously plenty of upside here. Victor's a great defender, but he's not a great defender for like DFS purposes. So Joel Embiid is someone I forced exposure to. No one else really stood out for me here. And I like Joel Embiid a lot. I kind of wish I was seeing him show up even more, but because of guys like Brook Lopez just showing up in so many of my lines and Walker Kessler and some of the other center plays I wanted to get some exposure to on the slate, and guys like Şengün still showing up, he's not showing up more than 20. So I'm not going to over tinker with the DS. I'm just going to let things roll, but I do like Joel Embiid a good bit. Let's see. Dixon, I hate you so much, but thank you for mentioning it because that is a more realistic scenario for guys like Bobby Portis than some other players. So hopefully that means it won't actually happen. Dixon said Wemby and Embiid going to go ham, 30-plus points each. That's what happened last time. So hopefully that happens again. Yeah, Wemby does have that 3-point upside, which, again, I understand if y'all want to take some shots. He's also only 1% owned. For me, just with them being right there, I would just much rather play Embiid. But yeah, that is the concern. He's a glass. He's a piece of glass these days. Breaks at the slightest inconvenience, even if he's just a little tired. Just not going to play today. Yeah, and Maxey. Those are definitely viable concerns, guys. Those are the realms of how that goes bad and why I'm not over 20% right now. Jimmy Butler out, tattoo. Thank you for letting me know. But damn, man, that means we have to probably take some shots on the Heat. And I was getting really comfortable with this slate, but it's fine. Gotta do what we gotta do. Joel Embiid was the call there. Next up, we have the Minnesota Timberwolves going up against the Atlanta Hawks. I like the matchup against the Hawks. I always do. We always do. You always play guys against the Hawks. Those are the best games, best game environments. Of course, it's never quite that simple. At least on the Timberwolves side of things, there's not a shit ton of injuries that are complicating life. Timberwolves are pretty healthy. And again, it's the matchup that I'm really targeting here. And so 4,400 Nas Reed, I like 16% min on him. I didn't go over the field primarily because, like I said, there's other value on the slate, but I just want to mix in some of the guys we know we can trust in good matchups. Anthony Edwards at 8,700 is just a little bit too cheap for a great matchup, good game environment. The upside hasn't been there. I can say that about all of these guys, but in a good spot, I'm going to take a shot. Julius Randle has been god awful, but I'm still going to put a 10% min on him. He's been lacking upside, but in some of the softer matchups, it's only happened like once or twice this season. That's when we've seen like a 45, 50 plus type of performance out of him. Scary. I don't expect it. I'm worried I'm burning 10% of my lines. I probably wouldn't advise that most people play Julius Randle or Dante DiVincenzo today, but it's what I'm doing, so I'm showing you guys that. Really just focusing on the matchup and positive game environment for me. Is there a blowout concern? Oh, and the close spread. It's one of those games that have like a nice total and a close spread, which is relatively rare, especially on this slate, outside of the Bulls-Milwaukee game that I like. So yeah, I like the Timberwolves more than most. The Hawks are tough because Trae Young is questionable, and that's another big piece of news that could dramatically impact this slate. If Trae Young gets ruled out, we're taking shots on guys like Jalen Johnson at 9K. He becomes much more worth it if Trae Young is out. Guys like, I don't even love 6,700 Dyson Daniels. Isn't my favorite thing. Risa Shea would see a small boost just from a usage standpoint. Might need his scoring a bit more, especially if Johnson is struggling or something like that. But yeah, we'll get there if we get there. But if everyone's healthy, they're not standing out for me. Timberwolves are still an elite defense. They've been struggling this season, but they're still playing their same style. They're not a team you want to play guys against. And so I'm focusing on the Timberwolves, not the Hawks for now. But that does change if Trae Young gets ruled out. So wait and see. Wait and see. All right, next up, we have the Nets going up against the Heat. Nets are a team that I thought I was going to have a little bit more exposure to be honest, but ultimately I did not end up getting to these guys too much. From a injury news standpoint, let's see, what are we working with here? Brooklyn. Dorian Finney-Smith being out is pretty big. All the other injuries they have, it's not really new. Ben Simmons is seeing some ownership. At 5,900, I get it. He's been slightly more aggressive from an offensive standpoint, but still not anywhere near as aggressive as you would like for him to be. Matchup against the Heat is another slow-paced game. Lowest total on the slate. Again, this is just not a game I'm trying to force exposure to. If there wasn't any injury news, I would probably end up playing Ben Simmons tonight to some extent. But just because of the way the slate has gone, I don't really need a lot of exposure to these Nets guys who are typically lacking upside, especially in a really soft matchup. So I could talk y'all's ear off for a while about potential plays, but I'm not playing any of them besides Day'Ron Sharpe, you probably saw, is showing up in about 1% of my lines. All right. This is one where we probably need to sit and look at it for a little bit. All right, let me see. Jimmy Butler's out. And so let me do a quick research of like who sees the highest increase in usage with Jimmy out. I could give you all educated guesses there, but would rather give you actual numbers to work off of. Miami Heat. Let me double check. Is there anyone else out? Miami. There we go. Yeah, the other injury does not matter. So let's see. With Jimmy Butler out, what are usage rates looking like? And I also want to look a little bit closer at the Nets from like a defensive standpoint. They're pretty neutral. They struggle the most against wings. So like Jimmy Butler could have been a semi-interesting play, but it's rare I take a shot on a guy like Jimmy unless there's an injury. I know he just went off against Detroit a couple games ago, but not usually my play style. Let's see. Okay, usage rates. So it's really Bam Adebayo who sees the highest increase in usage at 2.3%, or actually he's tied with Tyler Hero. He also sees a 2.3% increase in usage. And then Kevin Love sees a pretty substantial boost in just fantasy points when Jimmy Butler's out. So you can definitely make a case. Let me see if any of these guys are showing up naturally. Yeah, Tyler Hero showing up around field weight percentage, around 11%. And then that's pretty much it. I do like a lot of centers on this slate. I don't know if the Jimmy Butler news is going to be enough to move the field onto Bam Adebayo. I'm going to see if I can put a 5% min on him and make that work. And then I'm comfortable with the 11% Tyler Hero I'm getting. I'm not going to force more just because I don't love this game and or matchup too much. So we'll see what happens there. Let me look at the comments right quick. Yeah, Tattoo, it always goes as expected. Every single night. We always know exactly what's going to happen. Caruso did get paid. There is a piece of news. Anthony Edwards getting fined. That did make me slightly more interested in him just because he's petty enough to really want to go off on a night after some shit happens to him. Caruso, I think he's just vibing, man. I don't think I'm going to get there. Oh, appreciate that Tattoo. Highsmith starting. Yeah, he has recently in spots like this. 3,400 would make him slightly more viable. What I'm going to do, James, is what I usually do in these situations. I'll do the quick research like I just did and see who sees the highest increase in usage, make some quick gut reaction plays. But then after that, the DS continues to update all the way up until lock. And so I'll just keep refreshing. And if the projections increase, then I'll let that happen naturally. So that will potentially change some of my core plays, but so far it's not. Capella foul trouble wouldn't shock me. Capella. Tattoo, y'all have way too much to deal with in NBA. Yeah, it's always way too much. But it gives you an edge when you react quickly and in the right way. So I appreciate it a little bit, but on an 11-game slate, we could have used a break. Drew Smith is going to start. Okay, well, we'll see. We have time. To figure that out. Yeah, for me, it's just all the Miami guys. I just don't get excited about the news like I used to. Darius, you were cheating, but it's not your fault. I have work and stuff, and so it's made these pods a little bit harder to do. But this week, no work, and so a lot easier to do it. All right. Now we finally get into a good stretch of games. We had the ugly slate, like some of these ugly games, there will be some guys who explode here. So that's why I took some shots. But the later half of the slate is where things start to get significantly more interesting. So let me see. Did we ever get the... I feel like we did. I'm going to double check on the RJ Barrett piece. Yeah, no. RJ Barrett is still questionable, which is a pain. But RJ Barrett's questionable. Jakob Poeltl's out, which means Mogbo should start. That's why he's 5K, so we're not getting a huge discount there. But RJ Barrett being questionable is really the thing that matters the most for me. We would probably see who is it? Is it Jacoby Walter move into the starting spot? If that happens, that would make him slightly more DFS relevant, but I doubt it would probably take me off of Ryan Rollins, who has a good points per minute, versus a guy like Walter, who has a shitty points per minute. But if Barrett's out, I already have a 5% min on Scotty Barnes. Again, primarily because this is one of the higher total games on the slate. If this game stays close, it's probably because of him. I like him a lot more if RJ Barrett gets ruled out. I'll probably move that to like 5 to 10, from 5 to 10, or like 10 to 15% exposure if that Barrett news comes out in time. Is there anyone else? No, I think it's really just Barnes. It would be a boost for Grady Dick. Would probably want at least around like 0 to 5%. Maybe I'll say 1 to 5 because 0 is nothing. But I would want to see him show up a little bit more if Barrett's out, but that's probably it. All right. Then we have the New York Knicks, who are in a fantastic spot against the Raptors. But this one where I'm actually concerned about the blowout happening. Granted, I am in some of the other games too, but the Knicks have just been really good. And against the Raptors, they should be able to dominate them. We're seeing a pricey Brunson, a pricey Cat. They're very, very DFS viable. Ultimately, though, there are just other players I liked more on this slate, and so I couldn't force a min on them alongside some of the other guys I'm forcing exposure to. But they're viable. I get it. Some of the guys that I feel like could go a little under-owned or just weren't showing up in my lines as much as I feel like they should have been are guys like OG Anunoby, 6,100. Sim Model liked him a little bit. I like him. I like the matchup. I feel like he's priced appropriately, so we're not paying the premium on him like some of the more expensive guys, and we don't have as much value at the forward position as the others, and so there's less opportunity cost risk involved there. So I have a 10% min on OG, 5% min on Josh Hart, two guys I think can definitely come through at their price tag in soft matchups, and even if the game does blow out, they can do enough in that amount of time that they have at their price tags if they're really getting hot. Let's see. Do any other Knicks show up? Nope. There's OG, there's Hart, and that's it. Okay, only a few more games left. We're crushing through this today. Yeah, it's just such a good matchup for them. It's a pain. Be good, Tattoo. Yeah, you're doing a lot over the next few days. Like your NHL content, your NFL content. It's going to be busy. Have a Merry Christmas, man. Walter went off last night. Yeah, he did have a pretty good game. I didn't see it, but I'm not saying the upside's not there. It's just from like a literal points per minute, like how many points, fantasy points he scores per minute is relatively low in comparison to Ryan Rollins. Walter is still a viable cheapie, especially if Barrett gets ruled out. But for now, I'm not really looking at it. Charles just popping in to thank the Army. 1,500 profit yesterday and 6 tickets won. Holy shit, Charles. Good stuff, man. Good stuff. Congrats. That's awesome. If you all are interested in, becoming a DFS Army member, feel free to click the link in the description. That was not a paid advertisement, but thank you still, Charles. Link in the description. Feel free to use promo code Bob for a 10% discount. You'll get access to the domination station. You'll have access to the cheat sheets. I have my leverage plays on there. All the coaches have their core plays on there. Definitely a good time being had in there. Of course, they won't make it easy for us and just tell us RJ Barrett's playing. But it's fine. It's fine. No reason to stress. We have plenty of time. We still have like 45, 55 minutes. That's an eternity for NBA DFS players. We only need like 2 to 3 minutes to make adjustments. All right. Next up, we have the Bucks going up against the Bulls. The Bucks are a team that everyone and their mom is going to be on tonight. Why is that? Because the two highest usage guys, the guys who do everything when it comes to scoring, rebounding, assists for this team, are out. Damian Lillard, out. Giannis, out. With Lillard out, we're all assuming Ryan Rollins will start. We've seen that happen before. Giannis also being out just makes it a great day for Bobby Portis. He sees the highest increase in usage when both of these guys are out. He also has a great fantasy points per minute rate and fantastic matchup against the Bulls. Is this feel like deja vu to anybody else? I think last time it was just Giannis who was out, but weren't they facing the Bulls the last time Giannis was out? And yeah, I think Bobby struggled a little bit in that game. But again, that was when Lillard was playing too, and that's what made it a little bit rough. And Lillard went off in that game. So there wasn't really too much to go around. This is a revenge game for Bobby, which helps. So let me see. So 25% min on Chris Middleton. I forced that exposure. The minutes limit is terrifying. It's also part of why it's totally fine if you're not playing Chris Middleton tonight. But I think he'll be a little under-owned just because of that minutes limit and because people are forgetting he still has a ton of upside. He's been a good fantasy points per minute player since returning. We just need him to be extra efficient. He does see an increasing usage with Lillard and Giannis out, which should help that, in which will continue to increase his point per minute rate. It's just, will his shot fall? Will he get those rebounds? In the soft matchup against the Bulls, I'm willing to take that shot on him, but it is terrifying. I have a 2% min on Andre Jackson. Sometimes if he has a good run, they'll play him. And so play him a little bit more than they do at other times. And so I'm just interested in taking a shot there. Bobby Portis is a core play. He's showing up a lot. Brook Lopez is a core play right now. I'm probably going to limit some of my exposure to him. And by probably, let me go ahead and think that through a little bit more. I just don't know if I need Brook Lopez in 60%. Okay. And see, this is what I'm talking about. Tyler Hero just shot up. This is why I just like to wait and see what the DS does. He now has a 5.53 fantasy point per dollar rating in the DS. That's a full, I think, 1.5 points higher than it was earlier. And so that's why he's showing up in so many of these lines with Jimmy Butler out. So just like that, you're going to see Tyler Hero become a core play for most of the industry, if I had to guess, and myself included. I'm going to try and put a 50% cap on Brook Lopez. I like him a lot on this slate. I just don't want him as a core play. Matchup is good. I just don't feel like I need him in 60+% of my lines. But yeah, the Bucks were playing these guys. There's a few more who are showing up as well. Guys like Gary Trent Jr. has been more involved. He sees an increase in usage when Lillard's not out there. Ryan Rollins should get the starting nod. If he doesn't start, he won't be a core play for me, but we're all assuming he will, so he'll be a core play for me. And you can see here he has that 1.12 points per minute. That's the kind of rating you're looking for guys who tend to show more upside. When you see guys who just have explosive games, but they have a low points per minute rating, that's a guy who's a bit more volatile, and I'm a little bit more nervous to play. Well, yeah, maybe I'm thinking about the game before that. I don't know. There was one game this year where Giannis was out and I played Bobby and I had him as a core play and he just did not come through. But that was a few weeks ago. It's not going to impact things now. As you guys can tell, I have 99% Portis and 99% Rollins, but it's still in the back of my head a little bit. So Brook Lopez would still be one of my top 5 his own guys, even with that. So I'm just going to, it didn't change enough for me to feel like I need to keep the change. I'm just going to allow it to have 60+% of Brook Lopez. It makes me nervous because I like a lot of bigs on this slate, but if it doesn't move the needle too much by me capping it, there's no point in me tinkering with it. All right, for the Bulls, this side of the ball is just not as interesting. The game should stay close, but this Bulls team is struggling. Josh Giddey is questionable. If Giddey gets ruled out, that will impact things a bit more aggressively. We've seen Patrick Williams start here more lately. At 4,200, he'll become slightly more viable. Guy, we've seen, the rest of this crew. Zach LaVine sees an increase in usage with Giddey out. We've seen AO, White do well in those situations as well. We don't have it yet, so I'm not going to go through what I'm going to do, but I'll definitely force some exposure if Giddey is out. But if all these guys are healthy, no one stands out for me too much, or really at all. I don't have exposure to any Bulls right now. Okay. Let's see. Anyone say anything? Nope. There we go. There we go. Yeah, he didn't start. That's what happened. See, sometimes that was just a good case of me trying to overthink. Sometimes it's right in front of your face. He's not starting. You don't need to play him. All right. So for the Clippers going against Memphis, high total game, 229, which I like. Spread is close, which again is a rarity on this slate. That's part of why the best game environments are Timberwolves Hawks, Bucks Bulls, and Clippers Memphis. The other games are good because of the high total, but it's a little bit more risky just because of the wide spread. So this is one of those spots I wanted to make sure I had exposure to because of that. What makes things tough is this Clippers team has Zubac listed as questionable. And if Zubac plays, he's in a fantastic spot against this Memphis team that's been struggling against bigs. But if he plays, if he's out, then we have a guy like Mo Bamba at 3,100 who's starting and is in a, like I said, really good fantasy spot. And so would become probably super chalk on this slate if I had to guess. I would be playing a shit ton of Mo Bamba. But yeah, that's going to be what I do if that happens. But for now, Zubac is showing up in a good amount of my lines. Did he fall? Where's Zubac? Now he's only in 7% of my lines. He was showing up around 20 to 25% earlier. Did I do anything to make that happen? Maybe it was the 15% min I put on Hartenstein earlier. Or like right before the show. Or the Zach Eddy. Or Edie, I forget. But anyway, so I put a 20% min on Norman Powell. Sim Model liked him a good bit. We can take a look at it. This is a Sim Model. For those of you who don't know, it's a tool here at DFS Army. I only show it on these Monday shows or Thursday shows when we do those because there's less people watching. On the other days, I don't show it. But you look at Norman Powell, 7K. Look at the Sim Model, 3.51% chance of hitting 7.5x. You don't see anyone else above or closely below that surpass that. The only guy that's close is Bobby Portis, who we're all playing a shit ton of tonight. So he doesn't count. Is really Norman Powell. So Norman Powell is one of the plays I like a lot on this slate. His ownership is creeping up, though. I was hoping he was going to stay a little bit less owned. But I'm going to put that 25% min on him just because I like his floor at 7K. I like the matchup well enough. It's pretty neutral. But at 7K, he fits that. And I like the role he's had on this team. So I just wanted to make sure he showed up. James Harden is just a very steady Eddie stud. He goes out there and he's been doing what he's supposed to do with plenty of upside. Again, good high total game. And so I wanted to force some exposure there. And then I'm going to have to wait and see about Zubac. If we get the news he's playing, I am willing to put a 15% min on him. But for now, just because he's questionable, I'm not going to force that. JM said, Dylan Brooks is out. Thank God. It changes not really that much for me. I'm watching the Hornets game tonight, and I hate watching Dylan Brooks play. So that's really the only thing. It makes the game a little bit more enjoyable. But Brooks, I'll double check. I don't think there's really a massive usage benefit here because he doesn't have the highest usage rate. But sometimes when you make assumptions like that, it can burn you by not looking close enough at it. But yeah, I'll go back to it and see when it updates. James said, can I target the Clipper Memphis game? I just want to stack this up with JJJ and Ja and run with it and use Milwaukee value. I don't hate that at all, to be honest. I like this game more than most. I was looking at Jaren Jackson Jr., that's JJJ, a little bit earlier. Zach Edey is a leverage play for me on this slate. I'm significantly over the field on him. Is also more of a sim model play than anything. He hasn't shown the most upside this season, but he's shown signs. But Jaren Jackson Jr., 7,200. Look at 7,200. He doesn't have like the 8x upside in the sim, but he still stands out a little bit in comparison to some of the other guys in his price range. There's like the Zubac play I mentioned that I like a lot if we get that news. Okay, we just got that Lonzo and Giddey are out, which means we have to look at the Bulls. So much news all the time on these gigantic slates. Norman Powell stands out a good bit, but Jaren Jackson Jr. is viable. I just liked other guys a bit more on this slate, and I ended up taking that shot on Isaiah Hartenstein, and so that definitely impacted things where I didn't feel like it made the most sense for me to play JJJ, but he's not bad. And then Ja, I didn't get to either, primarily just due to, let me look a little bit closer and just make sure I'm not missing anything. Yeah, the matchup's just tough for them. The Clippers have been pretty good against bigs like Jaren Jackson Jr., and they've been pretty good on defense too against guards, ranked 22nd in fantasy points allowed. So it's just hard for me to get excited, even though Sportsbook likes the game a good bit, and I mentioned it being a pretty good environment because of the spread too. So I'm not doing it, JM, but I don't think it's a bad call out. You think it's a full blowout, Dixon? There's barely any studs for the Bulls. We'll go back at the end of the show. I want to give the DS a little bit of time to update. But next up, we have the Wizards going up against the Thunder. For the Wizards, Coulibaly being questionable impacts things a good bit. If he's out, that's a boost to the guards, guys like Kispert, George, Carrington. Or did we get the news on Bilal already? Let me double check. There's been so much news already. It's just all starting to go in circles. And Merle's starting, and he's available to play. Wade's out. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, Bilal's doubtful. He's been doubtful most of the day, so we just don't have him in there at all. And then Sar is questionable. I was thinking about Sar earlier today, taking a shot, but the Q tag got me off of it. I don't even know if they really would play Joe Val more if Sar got ruled out, but I'll have to look a little bit closer at that to see. But for now, going up against the Thunder, this is a good defensive team. Not enough injury news for me to really get interested in taking shots on these guys. They've had so many guys already get hurt, and none of them have really been super DFS viable besides Poole, who, if you play him in soft matchups, it goes well. Outside of that, it's a tough day, which I like players like that. You know when to play them. Today's not one of those days. So Sar's showing up in 1% of my lines. That's about it. Oh, I didn't even mention I put a 5% min on Larry Nance Jr. as well for the Hawks. I liked his upside the last few games. I think he's a little underprojected, but we have so much value on this slate. I didn't want to increase his projection because I'm pretty sure that's why he's underprojected. So the other guys show up a bit more who are in better spots, arguably. But I had the 5% min just because I wanted to, still have some exposure. So yeah, nothing for the Wizards. For the Thunder, once again, just like Cleveland, just like the Knicks, they're in a great matchup, but they have a gigantic spread that we should be worried about. Granted, that's why all of them are lower owned than they should be or would be on a smaller slate. But I am going to be significantly over the field on SGA. This spot is just too good for me to not be over the field on him. The blowout risk is concerning, yeah, but not enough for me to not play SGA in this spot. Worst team against guards in the NBA. Isaiah Hartenstein, I have a 15% min on. Again, great matchup, priced appropriately for what he's been doing here. And I just wanted to make sure I had some exposure. And then Jalen Williams shows up a ton by himself. Oh, he fell too. He's not only around 14%. He was showing up a lot more. Oh, I didn't even talk about George. Let's look at him. George is popping because Bilal is out. And then, is there more news? Why? No, it's really because of Bilal. He sees just a slight increase in minutes, which should solidify his floor, which is, again, you look at his points per minute, is better than Kispert's, it's better than Carrington. And so that's why George is kind of like the better, safer DFS option between those two, because he typically produces better with the time he has. Minutes are still scary, but he's 3,300. And then let me see, how am I thinking about? Yeah, he's not. I need to see how much George is too much George is my real question that I'm working through. Because right now he's showing up a little bit too much for me, from at least what I would be comfortable with. Yeah. I think I'd rather be around like 25, 30%. I don't really want much more than that. So I'm going to do 25. This could change depending on just how ownership updates and some of the other pieces. Like, as I just get more information, I like to adapt to it. But with what I know for now, I think 25 is probably as much as I want. And then hopefully that makes Jalen Williams show up a little bit more too, but we'll have to look back at that. Oh, Bilal's out. Nice. Hartenstein, yep, I like that. This is the same Champagny that was on the Spurs when he get a reader. Oh, he's traded. What other value do we have besides Milwaukee? We can look at it. For blowouts to happen, starters get their points. Yeah, that's part of why I don't overthink it. I've seen blowouts happen and starters still crush enough times where I don't even overthink it anymore. Jaden McDaniels is also a core play for me. I didn't touch on him either when we're looking at Timberwolves. Too many games. But all right. For the Portland Trailblazers, when it comes to injury news, there's not any, which makes them a very tough team to look at from a DFS perspective, especially going up against the Mavs, a very well-known, just slow-paced team. So I'm not playing Portland tonight unless we just get a ton of injury news. And none of them are showing up in my lines, which I'm fine with. And then for the Mavs, we have Luka Doncic questionable. That is a gigantic piece of news on this slate. I have his ownership went up. I'm going to increase that to 8. I have an 8% min on Luka Doncic because, once again, fantastic matchup against Portland, but a wide spread. So blowout risk is concerning. But with that said, I think this is a fantastic spot for him. I want to be at least around field weight to a guy that can break the slate at any given moment. But if he gets ruled out, that's when things get a little messy. Because of how late this game is, it's just one of those spots where if you want to get really cute with it, like, you can take some shots on Kyrie. You can take some shots on Dinwiddie because he will or should start in that spot unless they get weird. Those are probably the two most viable guys. But ideally, we get that news before 7, and I can just play a ton of Luka Doncic. And you guys see it, like, I feel like someone's watching this and just slowly increasing the ownership percentage every second. Now I have a 9% man on Luka. But yeah, we'll have to wait and see what happens there. Okay, I want to look back through at some of these changes that happened while we were alive and just make sure I like them. And I can also see we keep having news rolling in. Let's see. Desmond Bane is expected to play. That's nice. So I remember, I think it was JM who was asking about JJJ. He's someone that I was actually planning on playing if we got that Desmond Bane news that he was going to be out. That's when I was definitely going to take a shot on Ja and JJJ in that spot. But with Desmond Bane playing, that's what made me a little bit less excited about it. Okay, there hasn't really been other news outside of that. So let's look at the Bulls. It doesn't look like we've updated these guys yet, so let me put their information in and see who I want to give a boost to. Lonzo and Josh Giddey, who sees an increase in usage. Boom, 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 boom. All right. So the guy who sees the highest increase in usage at 3.3% is Kobe White. Makes me like Kobe White a bit more. I'll put a like on him. And then we have a lot of guys who don't matter. So it's really Kobe White who benefits the most in this situation, which makes sense. For me, I still like Zach LaVine more. And I also like Ayo a bit more. I like playing guards against Milwaukee in general, but Damian Lillard's not playing. So I don't know a ton about Ryan Rollins, but most of the reason why I ever started playing guards against Milwaukee was just as soon as Damian Lillard got traded, because we used to play guards against Portland. Just not the best defender. Yeah. Ryan Rollins is probably better though. So I'm not going to force Ayo in for now, but hopefully we'll see a little bit more Zach LaVine and Kobe White. I'm just keeping the like on them so I remember that I want to make sure I have some exposure to him. That's the biggest thing for me there. And then Kobe. Matchup is a little bit better for Patrick Williams with Giannis out. Let me see. Is Patrick Willis worth looking at? Or Patrick Williams? He used to, 32 points last game against Boston when he played 21 minutes. At times he has 30-point upside, but he's been battling through an injury, so he hasn't seen more than 22 minutes since returning. Makes you a little nervous, but let me look a little bit closer at the matchup. Chicago. Giddey. Kobe. Yeah. I want to take a shot on Patrick Williams. I'm not going to lie. It's a little weird, a little goofy. The minutes are really the biggest concern. But at this price tag, 4,200, and with him assuming he typically starts when Giddey's out. It's getting cute, but I like taking a shot here. Like just a 3 to 5% men, something like that. It's just enough to get really different. Yeah, LaVine is a talented scrub. It's weird. He hasn't been elite in a long time, but I can look a little bit closer at him too, just to make sure he's shown signs of life. Yeah, he had like the 52-point game against Boston. Tough matchup, but good. He's had some 40-point games, and he's 7,300? Yeah, 45. That would be good. Yeah, he still has upside. Just a little spread out. He's the only guy on this team besides Vucevic, which you can make a case for Vuce, but there's just, again, too many centers I like on this slate. He's not going to make the cut for me. Yeah. I mean, almost anyone is better than Lillard besides Trae Young. Nick Dogg said, you think Mitchell is best play for Cavs and Brunson best play for Knicks? Or are you looking at other starters besides them? For the Cavs, yeah, Mitchell's my favorite. Garland's a close second. For the Knicks, it's a little bit tougher. I mean, I think Cat's probably your actual best play if you're just looking for like who has the most upside. But both Cat and Brunson were just a little bit too pricey for me on this slate, just given their price ranges. And so I can describe that a little bit better. So point guard, sort by salary. 8,300, we have guys like Donovan Mitchell, just 100 above him, and I like him significantly more. which could be a bad call, but I like the matchup a bit better too. And then even a little bit below him, we have guys like Darius Garland. And so it's really the Cavs that got me off of Brunson the most. You can make a case for Suggs being better than Brunson too in this spot. And I like Ant a little bit higher as well. And then now we have guys like Ayo and Kobe White in particular. I'm going to at least put a 5% on. I need to see him start to show up in lines just so I know what they look like. So yeah, and then Sexton a little bit lower. So Brunson's not bad, Nate. He's just not my favorite play. Favorite play from the Knicks are guys like OG and Josh Hart. Just getting different is kind of the thought process there, and one of the higher total games on the slate. Dixon, I rarely ever get to Kelly O. Can he be in the same lineup? I'll look a little bit closer at him. I just rarely get there with what's his face? Rookie. McCain. Yeah, with McCain out, he does see an increasing usage, which is a thing. But Kelly O just isn't standing out for me too much at this slate at 6,100. So I wouldn't go there, but you know, he can be streaky. He can still be volatile. Yeah. I don't want to scream it from the rooftop, but I have some interest in Patrick Williams today. It's crazy. Thank God Trae Young is available. Thank you for that, Dixon. Yeah, with Trae Young playing, it makes it a lot easier for me to not have to worry about the Hawks too much, or really much at all. I was really scared that if he was going to... I mean, I do have that 5% min on Larry Nance, but that's it. Okay. So I think that's everything, guys. I know we went a little long. In general, for me on this slate, playing a shit ton of Bobby Rollins, Tyler Hero showing up a bit more for me, Jaden McDaniels, Brooke Lopez. These are my core plays. I'm going to go ahead and put... actually, I'm not going to boost that to 60. I'm not going to boost Brooke Lopez. This is going to be like my top 5 guys. And then there's a bit of a drop-off from Brooke Lopez to SGA. We forced Chris Middleton in there. I like him. Capped George. But I'm going to keep a close eye on that. Naz Reid, Embiid. And then Kessler and Markkanen are falling. Not enough for me to force more exposure to, but I'm going to keep them in mind as well. I don't want them to fall too much. Gary Trent Jr. fell off a lot, but still around field weight, which I can live with. Jalen Williams fell off a good bit too. Again, I think that's just more news we're getting. It just kind of lowered the priority for him. Zach is a leverage play for me today. Quite a few technical leverage plays that we've touched on the show. Yeah. Okay, this is good. I'm still a little iffy just because we're still waiting on some news, but I'm comfortable enough to rock with this if that's the way it ended. But y'all, I appreciate you. I know things have been a little all over the place. We haven't had the most consistency yet when it comes to shows. But I think once NFL season ends too, we'll go back to having Friday shows at least. And the schedule will probably at least be like Monday, Wednesday, Friday, besides whenever I go in the office, which is typically Tuesdays and Thursdays. But sometimes it will be like a Monday and Thursday, like it will be that first week in January. So shows will be a little sporadic until we get into a good routine again. But appreciate the support and y'all sticking it through with me. If you all could hit a like on the show, it's always helpful so people know that you're engaged. But if not, I will see you all not tomorrow. No shows happening tomorrow. No games happening tomorrow. No show on Wednesday. It's Christmas, but I'll have a leverage sheet up around like 10:30 or whenever we start getting news. And then Thursday, Friday, we should have shows. I don't think B-Dubs will be able to join me this week. I know he has a lot going on, but I'll try and get some guests to kind of make things a little bit more interesting. So good luck tonight, y'all. We'll see you on Thursday. Peace out.